Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's really great to see such a wonderful turnout for the Gloucester Writers Center and also for Fishtails. As you well know, the theme of tonight is rock and roll. One of the reasons why I wanted to do tonight as rock and roll is because I have a lot of gratitude for rock and roll. Rock and roll basically saved my life. As a lot of people here tonight, it's one of those things that when it gets you, it gets you. And it's a pull, it's a forever pull. And I'm so grateful to all the musicians over all the years that have been on my own rock and roll journey, and all the love and joy that it's given me to go to shows with my rock and roll pals. My very best rock and roll friend is here tonight, my friend Lynne MacKenzie, and also Chris Kennedy, who's going to be telling the story tonight. Thank you guys for being part of my journey, my rock and roll dream. There's been a lot of songs about rock and roll, of course, you know, Neil Young and Led Zeppelin and Dylan and, you know, all the greats. But one recent by just brings it all home. It's called I Still Believe. And does everybody know that song here? Yep. Still Believe. It's such a great one, so I want to kick it off tonight with a little quote from that song at the end. It says, who'd have thought that after all, something as simple as rock and roll would save us all? And long live rock and roll. We're not dead yet, and we're not finished yet, and we're going to hear all about its impact tonight. Our first storyteller is Heidi Pulkenin, the beautiful Heidi Pulkenin. And she's a very good friend of mine, and she's up first. And please welcome Heidi.
It's always an odd feeling to use a microphone. It's just, as an actress, a stage actress who likes to project and then has this instrument in front of her, it's always interesting. Anyway, hi, I'm Heidi. So, in thinking about rock and roll, I thought figurative or literal or figurative. And so I thought I'd share about 30 seconds of literal and an image of a very excited girl with her love, with a tie and a Union Jack bra and cutoffs and Vans and ready to go to the Stones, and her 3-year-old daughter saying, "Have fun at the Rockin' Stones, Mom." and and getting to the stadium and literally racing up every single tier to the top, which is the only seats we could afford, and finding a spot about 6 tiers down that was empty, and feeling very rock and roll, and jumping down there and enjoying the Rockin' Stones from that vantage point, which was heaven on earth. However, what really came to mind, which is bizarre, but it's Heidi, when the word rock and roll was delivered to me, immediately, and literally it was happening about 30 seconds ago, before I get on stage as an actress, you know, break a leg or whatever the phrase for everyone else, for me, it's always rock and roll. Rock and roll, Heidi, let's do it. Rock and roll, whoever's going on stage, let's do it. And as a very young person of 16, I was a part of a play called Terrorism, Children of the Holocaust. For 3 years, we performed in Newburyport first at the Firehouse Theater, and then we took the play on tour all over Europe. And we ended up at Auschwitz for the 50th anniversary of its liberation, and were a part of that celebration. And for the experience of doing the play for months on end before arriving there, and rock and roll, Heidi, get on stage and do it, being a character who was not so loved, quite a villain, actually, and having to have a complete and total, utter breakdown at the end of the show, being a capo, which was a snitch in the cell block. So my character was quite hated. And after the show, you know, a lot of people would come up after and have their ideas and things to share with me. But she has a total breakdown at the end of this show, and I was able to get there. Whatever pieces from my 16-year-old world as a non-Jewish person and having no concept of that lineage, I was able to get there. So 3 years go by, and this is a big deal. And we arrive, we've done the show in Germany, we've done the show in Czech, in Prague, and we arrive in Poland, and we arrive at Auschwitz. And we're staying at a Catholic sort of hostel situation, the cast. And we are given a tour of Auschwitz. We have survivors with us. We have a former SS officer with us. It was meant to be a summit of sorts, and I was proud to be a part of it. And going through this experience of having played someone who had been there, not specifically Auschwitz, Theresienstadt, but going through Auschwitz and experiencing the realities before you of what had happened there, I shut down emotionally. And so we got to the performance, the night of the performance, and for the first time, I'm not a nervous person. I mean, I don't know, here I am, I don't get nervous. And I was petrified, totally petrified to do this show. And, you know, rock and roll, Heidi, you gotta do it. Just do it, rock and roll. So I did it, and I got on stage, and I couldn't release. However, lights started flickering, lights went out, doors started opening, doors were closing, the curtains were blowing, there's no wind in a theater, and there were spirits all around us, and it was rock and roll. It was amazing. And so I got to that point, and any actors in the room can understand this when I say, sometimes your mind comes in and the person that you're supposed to be playing disappears for 30 seconds. But with the help of the spirits that were there, I was able to go to where I needed to go, and it was rock and roll, and it was amazing. And I'd like to thank them all tonight.
Thank you, Heidi, so much. Our next storyteller is a Boston music legend, and we are really happy to have here tonight Moose Savage. Moose!
Well, thank you, and it's like a ridiculous honor to be here. This is like the coolest damn thing in rock and roll story, man. Thank God it wasn't, I mean, I could have talked about toilet paper and all the different ones. I was once asked to do like a symposium on it, but I never got the part. Anyways, I'll give you my rock and roll story. I'm sure I only got one, but listen, I'll set it up quick. It's like June 1971, and I'd moved out to San Francisco, You know, my hair's long now. I hadn't been long for a while, but this was the hippie days. I was a full-fledged hippie, and I was living out in San Francisco, and I had some friends that were living in Boulder, Colorado, in a house, and it was like, yeah, come on, check it out, check it out. So I got on a plane, and this is the day where I actually snuck my cat on the plane. I'm trying not to get... I want to give you enough of this without getting carried away, so I go over. But my cat, Pretty Girl, or kitten at the time, some people know that cat. Anyways, and I snuck her on my, underneath my coat, no fancy thing, and I won't tell the whole story. So she got out there, I got her with my friends. And then, so I was out there, and I went to see this other friend that I met in San Francisco. His name was Uncle Bill. And anyways, I went there one day, and we were talking. It was cool, and it was, that was that. And I think I wound up going back again. And a little history on that. It turned out he was the guy, this was like when the Maharaji, the kid was big, the kid was the guru, the kid guru. Well, he was going to the airport to pick him up. So this was like the beginnings of all that stuff. Not that it has much to do with the story, but it has to do with him. Anyway, so eventually, I think I went over there one day. I went there another day. And the guy, man, he had this gorgeous, I'm talking like 97, his old lady was just, gorgeous. It was like, holy shit. But anyways, the day I happened to go there, it turns out there was like, he says, there's this like big free concert going on. It's going to be like with the Allman Brothers and Delaney and Bonnie and the Youngbloods, and it's outdoors, and come on, you should come with us. And I was like, yeah. So I did, and it was just like one of those things. Well, anyways, the crazy thing, I was a big Youngbloods fan, and people that know the Youngbloods, I mean, peace, love, get together, ride the wind. I mean, it's like smile on your brother. Anyways, this particular time, at that period of time, June 71, it was like, I'm there, and I'm like, they're playing. All of a sudden, there's like trillions of bikers in the front, and everybody's like going to fight each other. They're pulling knives. They're trying to climb a stage. I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. They're playing, come on, people, smile on your brother, get ready. And these guys are doing this stuff. Anyways, so it wasn't the best vibe in the world right off the bat. But, hey, I love the man, and they continued, and they did play. Okay, so next, Delaney and Bonnie's up. So I go bopping around because there's a little break. Somebody hands me a cookie. Yeah, hey, eat a cookie. Hey, a cookie. Hey, I had nothing to eat that day, I'm sure. Things are tough. Anyway, so I had the cookie, and, and not too long, all of a sudden, there's like, I don't know if you can see it visually in my head. But it was not like, it was not like I got dosed nicely. It was fucking angel dust, I imagine. It was awful. It was bad news. So next thing I know, it's like, angel dust. I'm like, I'm like, people are like, what's the matter with this guy? What's the matter with this guy? What's the matter with this guy? Well, there was things the matter with this guy. Anyways, it was bad. Finally, I was like, and they came and they brought me back to where the tent was backstage. And, I'm there, and it's like, I'm a real mess, and it was a drag. And then Delaney was actually back there, and he looks over and says, what's with this guy? And they said, oh, he got dosed like angel dust. And I said, that's it, we're out of here, we're not playing. Tell them we left, tell them we're sick, I don't care, we're not playing. So they left, I mean, I knew that. People didn't know that, but I mean, it was such a rotten bad scene. Anyways, eventually I was good enough to get out of there, so they let me out, and I went back, and the Allman Brothers come on. Well, come on, the Allman Brothers. This Dwayne Allman was still alive. It was like, whoa. But, my head is like, I mean, I feel as bad as you can feel, pounding and pounding. And everybody is so happy. Everybody's wonderful. The Allman Brothers are playing. And, of course, Delaney and Bonnie and so they're playing extra long. They're playing extra long. It's like going off on these things. It's like this. And I'm like... And it went on and on. They probably played like 3 to 4 hours. And of course, there's nowhere I could go. I had to go with the people I came with, and I didn't know where I was anyways. But anyway, so eventually that's what happened. And it's like, eventually, all I can think of, which was the biggest drag in the world, here I am seeing the Allman Brothers, Dwayne Allman. I'm like wicked in love with the situation. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. This is spectacular. My dream outdoors on a beautiful day. And I got a headache that is splitting my brains out. Anyways, eventually it ended. And, I got the ride back. And this is the story. They all can't be like great. They all can't be fun. you.
That was awesome, Moose. Thank you so much. I just want to remind storytellers that Greg Bover here is the timekeeper. And just keep your eye on Greg. He's sitting right here, and he's got the only cell phone that I'll ask to be put up tonight. No cell phone waving. Our next storyteller is our storyteller in residence, the lovely Virginia McKinnon.
Actually, my rock and roll story is about my grandmother. I'll tell her rock and roll life. And since she never learned to speak English, I'm going to have to tell her story in Italian. So we'll start with Sorelle e fratelli. Mi chiamo Rosalia Cianciolo Biscirello. Andato in una bellissima città e Castello di Rusa in Terracini, Sicilia. Okay, we'll switch to English now. Well, she was, light's not too good here. I should have it memorized, right? The home was very beautiful. My home, it was up in the mountains, but it was in a seaside village in Sicily. The floors are made of marble, and my family was considered wealthy. We had dressmaker come to our home, and my clothes were tailor-made in the latest fashions. I had several brothers and sisters. I was engaged to a very handsome, adventurous young man. His name was Salvatore Biscirello. He was very charismatic. He was small in stature, but he was powerful, and he fashioned a large black mustache curled at the ends. He was known as Bajano, which meant show off, because as a child he wore a little red beret and he bantered around the neighborhood, and he would take gold coins from his family chest and go down to the village and help the poor people. He was like the Robin Hood of the neighborhood. His family never missed the coins, so he was really loved by everyone. Our engagement was very long. At Salvatore, I call him Thudy, actually, Thudy Bajano. He made several trips to America. My family never wanted me to marry him because they didn't want me to leave my secure life in Sicily to go off to a foreign land. But he promised my family that he was all through with these trips to America, and he would now settle down in Sicily. But as soon as I became pregnant, off Thudy went to America. And when my child was 4 months old, he sent for me. My family wouldn't give me my beautiful trousseau. I spent hours and hours embroidering and crocheting lace, and I had such finery. And they said, no, they said, because you're coming back. This is only going to be an adventure, and you're coming back to us. So off I was given passage on the lower level of the ship. Very, very long journey to America. Seems like it took a month to get there. But Thudy, he was waiting in Ellis Island for me, and I was processed, and he took me to an apartment in Canton, Mass. I didn't know the language. I had no family. I had no support system at all. Well, when my little Maria, when she was 4 years old, I says, Maria, here's your birthday present, your brother Charlie, to join your brother John that was nearly 3, your sister Rosalie was nearly 2, and here's Charlie, 4 little children on little Maria's birthday. So we traveled. We went from city to city. We went to Framingham. Well, first in Canton, my husband, he found a job in a factory, and soon he was made foreman, and people came to our home. He was very, very intelligent, and he would sign people up, and he'd fill out the applications. He could read and write, and he'd tell them he'd have a job for them in the morning. So off we went to these different cities, and I did send for my sister Francesca and his brother Bartolo, and soon they were married, and so we started gathering a family here. So this was on the second page about them here. We had many, many more children. I had a total of 11 children. Had 5 boys and 6 girls. But see, your children were your wealth in those days because they went to work, especially the sons, and they brought all the money home. And my husband bought a boat, the American Eagle, and his 5 sons went fishing. They all brought the money home, and I kept all the money. I only gave them spending money. But when they were married, I paid for all the furniture, and I paid for the wedding, and they were married with no debts, and soon they were able to buy their own homes. And we lived on 33 Commercial Street. That's where the Chamber of Commerce is now. There's a 4-story apartment house, and we were on the 4th floor. And soon, with this money, we were able to buy a house on Gould Court. And then we were able to buy a second house. It was an adjoining house on Pine Street. So all our family lived together. And it was really, our Catholic faith, our Sicilian heritage that kept all our family together. Every week I made homemade bread. I used a 25-pound bag of flour. And we had a beautiful garden. We had all kinds of flowers, and we had grapevines. My husband made delicious grape from the Concord grapes. And World War II prevented my husband and I from taking our planned trip back to Sicily. My 3 sons went to war. Thankfully, all returned safely and went back fishing. Shortly after the war, my husband died of a heart attack at 64. I did return to Sicily after World War II on a cruise ship, and my parents were both dead. All remaining was my brother Augustine and my sister Teresa. My son John was visiting his son in Italy. He was in the Army, and he joined me in Sicily with his wife, and we returned home on an airplane. In my spare time, I continued to crochet beautiful lace, and I made afghans and for all my children and grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. On my 92nd birthday in 1980, I had 100 descendants, 11 children, 56 grandchildren, and 33 great-grandchildren to the 5th generation. And I'll stop with a little song. My husband and I used to love to sing. He had a deep baritone voice, and I had a high soprano voice, and we would sing operatic song and back and forth. It was just beautiful. We were so in love, and we so loved children. And he would sing this little song to me about the summertime. It went like this. It says, Come bella stagione, senza labbra, senza torna, senza vento come na. Dimmi la verità, scendendo ci campare una felicità. Come bella stagione. Benedici a tutti. Buonasera, arrivederci.
Thank you, Virginia. It's always such a pleasure to have you here at Fishtails. I just want to take a moment to thank Howie and Matt from Shorten, Maine for hosting us tonight. Please, everybody, give a round of applause for Howie and Matt.
This is my grandmother. She came, that's my mother. This is my grandmother 20 years later with her 11 children.
See Virginia if you want to see a close-up of these pictures. Thanks, Virginia. Our next storyteller is Dan Duffy. He's from the Beech Tree Bed and Breakfast in Rockport. Dan, come on up and tell your story.
Well, first I'm going to say it's not a great story. And secondly, you're a hard act to follow. Because I do have some lyrics that I've handed out to some folks in the audience, and hopefully you're going to help me because I can't carry a note, okay? Starts out with a question. Where were you in the summer of '69? It was the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The age of Aquarius. I only have 5 to 7 minutes, all right? Well, I was 18, just graduated from high school. My brother Rich was 22, and he had just returned from Vietnam. While he was in the war, his wife left him, and he returned like many other soldiers with undiagnosed PTSD symptoms. That summer was a pivotal time for my brother Rich, because what he did was he shed his former self, and he embraced the life of a Jesus freak flower child. And I mean that in a very positive sense, not a negative sense. But so imagine my brother. He had an army blanket that he cut a hole out and he put it over as a robe. He had a rope as a belt, sandals, and he had his Bible. And he would recite the Bible to anybody that he could corner and anybody who would listen. Within the next year, he and other kindred spirits from New Jersey decided to go cross country. They went to Corrales, New Mexico to form a commune. And in December of 1970, my mother got a postcard from a girl named Dee that said she and Rich went to the Rio Grande River. They took LSD, and when she awoke, he was gone. And we've never heard from my brother since. So 40 years later, I decide I need to write a memoir. And so what I've done is I'm writing a memoir, mostly truth, part fiction, about the impact of my brother on my own life. My story begins with Rich mysteriously returning after 45 years along with his GTO convertible, and he coerces me to retrace his cross-country route. Rock and roll plays a large part in my story, driving Rich's GTO with him beside me. Even though we were worlds apart on many levels, we connected on one, rock and roll. On our way, we listened to a lot of 8-track tapes of our favorite groups that played at Woodstock. You remember Woodstock, right? Defined by Rolling Stone magazine as one of the top 50 greatest moments in the history of rock and roll. But have you ever heard of the Atlantic City Pop Festival? Okay? Many of the same bands that played in Woodstock played at the Atlantic City Pop Festival 2 weeks before Woodstock. Rich and I were both there, but we were in 2 different universes. Rich and I never got to Woodstock. So I thought I'd share a segment of my memoir that recaptures our memories of a prequel to Woodstock, the Atlantic City Pop Festival. So here I am driving. Remember hearing Joe Cocker, Rich? Absolutely, bro. It was at that racetrack concert. Oh, I get by with a little help from my friends. I get high with a little help from my friends. Yeah, I'd never seen so many hippies in one place. Everyone was giving me the peace sign and smiling. Me, I didn't know what I was doing there in the midst of all those long hairs. I was that Jack Nicholson dude in Easy Rider. They were happy because of the drugs. Pot, acid, hash, peyote, it was all there. I wasn't looking for the drugs, so I didn't find them. Well, I had an effing fantastic time. It was a 3-day coming out party for me. My freak flags were flying. I had 2 firsts that weekend. I dropped LSD, psychedelic, man. I was tripping for 3 days and nights. I saw a lot of starry-eyed hippies strung out like you. So what was your other first? I had a threesome in a van. We were up most of the night screwing our brains out. I tried to keep up with the beat of the music and the drumming I heard outside, but I couldn't. Who the hell could have sex to Iron Butterfly playing In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida? In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, honey. Don't you know that I love you? I didn't take the drugs that weekend or since. I've always been pretty straight. I was afraid if I got stoned, my life would morph into yours. And that was the last thing I wanted to happen to me. Too bad, bro. You missed a chance to kiss the sky. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. So what if I didn't get to Woodstock? By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong. And everywhere was a song and a celebration. Crosby, Stills, and Nash do that much better. I enjoyed the hell of the AC Pop Festival. It was far out. Many of my friends never even heard about it. Too bad they missed out on a good trip. Do you know what I remember the most about that weekend? The drugs, the sex, the music. When I woke up on Sunday morning and stepped out of the van, dark rain clouds were overhead. I looked east and saw the sun's rays streaming through a break in the clouds. Then it dawned on me, I hadn't had one of my damn nightmares the whole weekend. Well, that's good, Rich. Yeah, it was good, and I figured if marijuana and acid could drive my demons away, I'd just have to do more of them. I looked at Rich, shook my head from side to side, and wondered why it hadn't occurred to me before that he was self-medicating to ease his pain. I didn't know what he had gone through in Vietnam or how abandoned he felt when his wife left him. Just because the drugs he took weren't legal didn't mean they weren't helping him to cope. And isn't that what he and I had been trying to do with our lives? Deal with the circumstances we faced as best we could? I nodded at Rich as the bird song Turn, Turn, Turn echoed through my mind. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose unto heaven. Thank you.
It's a little sing-along for you. I think it was about a year ago I asked Chris Andersen to tell a story at the next Rock and Roll Fishtails, and so he's been there every step of the way, and I'm really thrilled to have Chris Andersen tell a story right now from the Eastern Point Lit House, and I encourage everybody to head down the other side of Main Street and check it out. Chris, come on up.
Thank you. When I think of Budweiser beer, I think of two things. The first happened when I was 5 years old. Yeah, tall guy. And my parents were fighting in front of the children. My dad grabbed my mom's hair and poured a Budweiser beer over her head. We left shortly after, moved to Texas, hundreds of miles away. And then the second thing I think of is the time that Budweiser sponsored my band's tour. The Shag Nasties were on the rise. We had a new album out, and we were about to embark on a 5-week tour. The tour was to be sponsored by Bud Light, actually, and which was probably a bad idea. The Dallas Observer had recently named us in their Music Awards issue as the drunkest band in town. At our record release show, the owners of the label stormed out halfway through our set as we earned that title. So our job was to go on tour and say things like, know when to say when from the stage. They also gave us this like basically balsa wood Bud Light guitar to play, but it accidentally kept getting broken, as did the neon sign. I don't know how it happened. Anyway, we pull into Wichita about a week into the tour. We have lots of time to kill. So we park it at the bar, watch the little CNN on the TV above the bar, and they're talking about Wichita's drive-by problem. And we're like, drive-by problem? And the bartender says, yeah, we're second behind LA. Like he's proud of it. All right. So we hang out and we're waiting for the beer up to show up with his 2 to 4 cases of beer they usually bought for us every town we played. And so eventually he shows up, we have a few beers, and by the time we play, we're pretty well lubricated. We do all right, but the problem is I'm not a very good guitar player. This was my first band, and I had just really started. I had worked with Rex, the lead singer, the main guy in the band, and he was in a very successful band at the time. And I said, hey, dude, you really should quit and do your own thing. And so he did. And he said, but you're in it. And I said, oh, okay. And that's how I got there. But that night after the show, we were doing 2 nights in Wichita. And that night after the show, there was a real cloud in the van on the way back to the motel. And I wasn't sure what it was, but eventually words started flying around the van, and a real fight broke out. And Rex is just thundering. He's like, he's really drunk, and he's like, I'll kill you! And I'm like, dang, that's scary. And it sounds too familiar, and it sounds just awful to have this drunken fight going on. And it just seemed all familiar. And at some point, during all the screaming and accusations, I jumped out of the van, the moving van, and I rolled to a stop, and the van came to a stop, and I'm going to walk back to Texas. That's it. I'm going to go get my job back. I'm going to school. I've already had enough of this, a weekend. Next thing you know, Rex is grabbing me by the collar, pulling me back towards the van. He's like, get in. And we head back to the motel, quietly finish off our beers and watch a little TV until we pass out. It's the rock and roll lifestyle. Second night, we're getting ready for the show, and Rex disappears with a girl, of course. And when he shows back up, he can barely walk. And we're a little concerned because we're about to take the stage, and we figure, let's just do this. We can do this. And we start to play, and it's going horribly. And at one point, Rex is singing one of our few quiet songs, and he kind of tumbles backwards into the drum set and falls. Stops the song dead in its tracks. So Howard hisses, fucking talk, say something while I fix my set. And Rex goes up and he starts saying things, but we really can't tell what he's saying. And then he points into the audience and he says, turn it off! And everybody, what's going on? And we look where he's pointing, and there's this very large man with a Chiefs hat and a Chiefs jersey on, and he's talking into one of the first cell phones ever, right? One of those big mobile phones. And there's a blue light, and the guy just kind of looks at Rex and he goes, shut up and sing your songs, man. And Rex says, I'm not your clown, fucker. And spit flies on that last word. And the guy gets up, and his girlfriend gets up, punches the button on his phone, and goes, some boys can't hold their liquor. You better watch him. And he walks out with his girlfriend. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll just keep playing. And so somehow we finish the set, and afterwards Rex vanishes with said girl he had been drinking with earlier, leaving Rex, Jeff, Howard, and I, the other members of the band, to start packing up. And as we're unloading off the stage, the sound guy says, no, guys, you really messed up tonight. And we go, yeah, we know. And he goes, no. That guy, he's the biggest drug dealer in Wichita. The manager's already called the police, and they're going to escort you out because you're probably going to need protection. And we're like, what? So we're going to get paid, and we're going to get out of here, okay? And so we go to get paid, and the bartender says, hey, man, the manager took all the cash, and he left 10 minutes ago. And we're like, no, we got to get paid. And he says, no, he's gone. And so finally, Howard, our drummer, he's got his own anger issues going on. He convinces the bartender to go into the office and look in the safe and just find anything he can get. And they go back into the office. Jeff and I sit outside the office. Jeff looks at me and goes, hey, man, if I die tonight, tell Lisa I love her. It's his girlfriend. And I look at him and I said, hey, if I die tonight, tell everybody I died taking guitar lessons. And so we get out into the, we go outside, and there's 20 policemen out there watching us as we load the gear into the van. We get into the van, we drive off. We get a call from Rex the next morning telling us where to pick him up. And always forgiven, all just like that. It's all good. So we go and get Rex. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to stay with this as long as I can. And about a month later, I would be back at my own job. And I would be starting classes at the local community college. And I was getting the hell on. So anyway, thank you.
That's a Budweiser. This is a memory of mine. Does anybody remember Rocket Records? Okay. So I drive my VW Rabbit, or I think maybe my Honda Civic, up to Rocket Records from Melrose, where I grew up. And I'd get there with my handful of Out of Control fanzines. I did a U2 fanzine. My friend Lynn did a REM fanzine. And drop them off at Rocket Records. And what I would pick up was Boston Rocks and The Noise, because you had to know what was going on. And tonight, we have T. Max with us, who did The Noise. And it's a real thrill for me to have him here tonight. Max, come on up and tell a story.
One correction there. It's not T-Max who did The Noise. It's T-Max who does The Noise. It's still happening. Come this September, 35 years. Anyway, I had two different stories to tell, and I probably only have time for one. So I want you guys to tell me which one you want to hear. I have one story about the worst case of anybody ever complaining about a review in The Noise. The other one is about my experience as a teenager going into Brooklyn and seeing The Who play. Okay, that's good because the other one is brutal. Okay, 16 years old. I got an older brother. I'm living out on Long Island. We take the train into Brooklyn to see the Murray the K shows. Murray the K was the most popular DJ in New York. And he would put on these shows, variety shows that were absolutely amazing. They had the best of Motown. So I'd go and I'd see the Temptations, the Supremes, the Four Tops, Patti LaBelle, Ben E. King. He just passed away last week. The venue was the Brooklyn Fox Theater. The Brooklyn Fox Theater proudly presents Murray the K's Holiday Review. And he would get out there and he'd go, Abe! And the whole audience would go, Whoo! Abe! Whoo! Kumazawa-zawa! Wah! Anyway, these shows, I waited on the block, a Brooklyn block. You wait around the block to get in. When you get in, you paid your $2.50 for the show. You were handed a record album, a 12-inch record of a previous show, and you could stay for 3 shows that day. There were 3 shows a day, 7 days a week. That means those musicians were playing 21 shows a week. Now, besides the great Motown acts, Murray the K was on top of it. He was actually known as the 5th Beatle. Well, he also brought over, for the same show that I was at, The Who and the Cream. Same show. This is along with the Temptations. Everybody got up there, got like about 5 minutes on stage. Anyway, since you could stay for as many shows as you want, we always took advantage of that. And we would actually see people get up in the front and jump up into the front seats. So, the first time ever I'm seeing The Who play. They play Miles, I Can See for Miles and Miles, I Can See for, right? They do that one, and then they do My Generation. In My Generation, I'm watching the show now, and all of a sudden I see this Marshall cabinet start smoking. And Peter Townsend goes back to the amp, he grabs it, yanks it center stage. he takes his guitar, bangs it into it and stuff. I'm looking at this amplifier and I'm going, whoa, that was pretty cool that the amp just went, right on cue. And he starts beating up the amp. So during the second show, I said, I'm curious about this, the whole production. I'm into that kind of thing. And I'm going, how did that happen? And so in the second show, I really didn't focus on the musicians. I focused on that amplifier. One thing I noticed is that I could see through it a little. I could see where the 4 speakers were supposed to be. You could kind of see some light coming through. So I realized, oh, it doesn't have speakers in it. Also, I noticed the grill cloth was kind of hanging down on the side, kind of just like tacked up, just to stay up there. So in the middle of the second song, I see a guy, very hip-looking guy, standing in the back of the stage. He's on the side with his paper in his hand, just like this. Talking about my generation, right? He, at one point, all of a sudden, I spot him. He gets down on his hands and knees and starts crawling like a dog across stage, right? And I'm watching him. Everybody else is watching band, and I'm watching this guy crawling. And guess where he stops? He stops right behind that amplifier, right? And now, okay, I can't see him now. He's crouched under there. Next thing I noticed, here comes the smoke. The smoke is coming up. Peter Townsend grabs the amp, right? Pulls it forward, exposing this man, although I never saw him in the first set, with his newspaper, like this. Fire coming out of his newspaper. This is what the special effect of the day. So I learned something right there, is that you can do things really cheaply, and get away with it. The other thing now, I only got a minute left here, and that's really the end of that story. But since then, I have read about that experience for The Who. And Keith Moon, the drummer, was so pissed that they had 5 minutes on stage that he went into Murray the K's office. And he just ranted on and on about only having they actually had 7 minutes, I'm sorry. They had 7 minutes on stage. He went in complaining about it because they were a big new band, right? Murray the K listened to this rant, sitting there, not saying a word. At the end of it, he just said, okay, 5 minutes. I'm taking 2 minutes away from you on stage. And just said, get out of here. So anyway, that's the Murray the K thing. I love Murray the K. I love Murray the K shows. Brooklyn. That's where I was born.
I just would like to say thanks again to T-Max. With all of our losses in the rock and roll world, WBCN, WFNX, TT the Bears, this week the Rat, all the great rock and roll clubs of our youth are fading away. All the great publications like the Phoenix and a lot of the things that we read when we were younger. But T-Max is still on it, 35 years. Thank you, T. Our next storyteller is a professor of art at Salem State College. It's been so much fun to talk with him on Facebook, and I really appreciate all the shout-outs. He's an incredible artist, and I welcome Haig Demerjian for his fantastic rock and roll story that he's going to tell us right now.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As I was asked to do this and I was thinking about rock and roll, I thought I would share an excerpt from a song aptly entitled Rock and Roll. And I'm bad at remembering lyrics, so I had to write it down. It's a little crib sheet here. I've got rock and roll. It satisfies my soul. That's how it has to be. I won't get mad. I've got rock and roll to save me from the cold. And if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. Rock and roll. And that kind of sums it up for me. So that's it for me tonight. Thanks. No, what I wanted to share with you about that is that's from a song entitled, aptly enough, Rock and Roll, from an album called Rock and Roll from 1987. Has a very powerful connection for me. This is actually the album cover right here. It's an album I'm sure not many people in this room have listened to. There's actually a T-shirt with a picture of the album cover on it. It's not actually the album cover, but yeah. So in 1987, this album came out, and I happened to see the greatest rock and roll band in the world, who I will contend that that's what they are. But I'm not going to make that argument tonight. Just go along with me on that, because everybody has the greatest rock and roll band in the world. That, but I got to see them in 1987 when this album came out. Happened to be in England at the time, and saw them on their home turf. And I'm going to talk about that show in just a minute, that very important show for me. But first, I should probably back up and talk about the band. It's a band that I don't know how many of you have actually listened to, but they're a band called Motorhead. Yeah. Lemmy, thank you. Somebody yelled. I was thinking, somebody's going to yell, Lemmy. All right, so Motorhead, real important band for me. And as I said, greatest rock and roll band in the world. The reason why I say that is that this year, this is another reason why I was psyched to come here tonight. This year, they've been together, they've been a band for 40 years. 40 years. 1975 they started. And they did not, it wasn't the kind of thing where, well, you know, and then they made $1 zillion, and then they took off, and then they came back for a reunion tour, and then they played sold out stadiums for their reunion tour. Then they packed it away again. They're never going to come back again. Oh, and then they came back for another reunion tour. The Who. Final, right? I remember in 1980, it's their final tour, the final tour, The Who. Not that I love The Who, and I loved T-Max's Who story, but Motorhead has been on the road for 40 years, and they've been making albums for 40 years, since 1975. And this is a band, I got to tell you too, that was doomed from the minute they started. They were led by a guitarist who didn't know how to play bass, but he was playing bass. And those of you who have listened to Motorhead know that his voice is like somebody gargling on whiskey and broken glass. And that now sounds so cool, and 10 years ago it sounded cool, 15, 20 years ago it sounded cool, but in 1975 I don't think it sounded very cool. When I saw them in 1987, well, let me go back to 75 for just a sec, although I wasn't there for that. The other thing about why were they doomed, this is a guy who started a band because he was thrown out of another band, Hawkwind. I don't know if anybody knows Hawkwind. Psychedelic, the most drug-soaked band in the world, maybe, right? Hugo knows all of these guys personally, so I'm like talking like, you know, Hugo knows. So, most drug-soaked band in the world. Lemmy gets kicked out of Hawkwind. Why? For doing drugs. He was doing the wrong kinds of drugs in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was becoming too big of a personality for the guys in that band. And they were like, okay, you're out. Now that you've been busted, you're out. So that's when he formed Motorhead. One other little thing for those of us in the room who are not youngish. 1975, I'm just putting this in perspective. Lemmy was 30. Who starts a band when they're 30 and then is successful? Okay, we got 5 years to get it going, and then 10 years we're really going. He's 40? He's 45? He was born Christmas Eve, 1945. This December, he will be 70 years old. They're on tour right now. Yeah. So, I mean, like when I say they're the greatest rock and roll band in the world, I mean, like, you can't beat that, right? Anyway, so back to 1987. Oh, shit, really? Damn it. Okay, I'm going to make this quick as I can. 1987, I'm in England. Motorhead's playing. I go, oh, I'm going to go see Motorhead. They're already, you know, it's 1987. They've been around for a while, so they're kind of a little long in the tooth to most people's I can't believe they're even still around in 1987. Wow, you'd think you would have died by then, or they would crash and burn or something. And again, that was 1987. All right, they're still at it. But so I'm like, I'm gonna go see them. I go to the show, I get to the venue, right? I'm walking around the side of the building, and I come around, I don't know what to expect. I come around the side, and I look, and whoa, I've never seen so many motorcycles in my life. Every biker gang on that island of England must have been there. So, and I'm like, you know, I'm skinnier than I am now. But I was a skinny kid, and I'm like, oh, all right, that's fine. I go in there, and I'm in there, and wow. Every biker gang in England is in this at this show, and also every metalhead that I've wow, and on top of it, and this is weird. Hugo will say, right, every punk, every hardcore, wow, I thought this was metal, and it was like you had to be a long hair. This was the first time I saw a guy with anarchy tattooed across his forehead, and I thought, wow. If you're not in jail, what are your job options? Like, what are you going to do when you've got anarchy tattooed across? But whatever. I didn't want to get in his way, and I was like, oh, all right. But so this is a group of people. Wow. And Motorhead came on, and I'll suffice to say they're amazing, right? They're blowing my mind. It's to the point where since then, I've listened to Motorhead pretty much every day of my life. I wouldn't say it's like breathing, but it's more like brushing my teeth. Like, if I don't do it, I feel icky. My mouth feels. I gotta. You know what I mean? So, whatever that's worth. So, I'm in there. Wow, and it's this. It's not a mosh pit. It's slam dancing. I mean, it's madcap slam. Bodies banging. Everybody's banging into each other. Oh my God, this is so awesome. Wow. And all of a sudden I look and I see a flash of this silver thing, and I go, what is that? Then I see a spray of red, and somebody just got slashed across the forehead, like 2 feet away from me, and there's blood in the air. And all of a sudden the slam dancing went, whoa, and everybody went, whoa. And then suddenly all these security guards or whoever jumped in, grabbed the guy who'd been stabbed, dragged him off, grabbed the guy who did it, and I retreated to the bar back over there and watched the rest of the show. I don't think Motorhead missed a beat, which is fine. I don't know. I'm going way too long. I got to get to this next. You guys want to hear the next piece? Okay. All right. So we're going to fast forward. About 15 years later, 2001, 2002, something like that, right? I've been to every Motorhead show I can since then, right? Since 1987. 2001, 2002, I was, we won't get into that, but I was making a movie. The movie could have had Lemmy in the movie, right? So I wrangled my way to go see them in Boston, and then get backstage and have a meeting with them or with Lemmy about like maybe you're going to play this role in this movie, whatever. So and I'm not a big rock and roll guy. I haven't been to a lot of backstage anythings, right? So I'm down on Lansdowne Street, see this. They played a great show, right? And then it's like 1 a.m. The show's over, and as I get to the guy, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to be up there, and I drop the name I'm supposed to drop, whatever. And you go up the stairs, and it's not backstage like you think of backstage, like there's going to be like a dressing room or something. But this was like one of those clubs on Lansdowne Street that's not there anymore. And they had like a club on the lower level, and then they had a club on the upper level. And so the backstage was basically a whole other club. So I got up there and I walk in, and there's a bar and there's food, and it's like a really vast space, which was pretty cool. But I walk in and I'm like, oh, I'm going to meet this guy who's like my hero, and I'm like, he's probably going to be a jerk to me, like I'm just ready, I'm like, this is rock and roll, I'm ready to just get kicked out, And I walk up and I see the bar and I look like that, and somebody's walking right up to me like this, and I turn, and right at my elbow there's Lemmy, right? And I'm like, oh, there he is, and he's just got a towel around his neck or whatever, and he's standing right next to me. And I'll probably have to do like a Lemmy voice, and it's going to be very bad, but I'm just warning you. So I'm standing there, he's right there, and I go, hey, Lemmy, great show tonight. And he was like, oh, thanks. Was it loud enough for you? Yeah, it was plenty loud. It was really loud. Yeah, I thought it was really loud too. It was a really loud show. I'm like, yeah, great. And I figured he's going to just push past me and keep walking. And I said, no, it was a great show. You guys were great. He's like, okay, let's go get a beer. I'm like, okay. So I go walking with Lemmy, and we go up to the bar, right? And so I'm sitting at the bar with Lemmy, and I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, we're having a beer. And he's like, so, was it loud enough? He's doing the whole thing. And then at one point he goes, let's go see where the ladies are at. I'm okay. I'm married to that lady over there, so I'm not interested in the ladies, but, you know, whatever. But I'm like, no, I'm going over there with Lemmy. So we go and we sit in a booth or whatever. And I start talking to him about, you know, the movie or whatever. And then that's, you know, a good long conversation, really nice. But so then here's the part that's going to be interesting. And I'm sorry I went so long. But he goes, I said to him, so I've been seeing you guys since 1987, you know, and I've seen you every chance I get. Oh, yeah. I said, the first time I saw you was in 1987 in Norwich, England. He's like, oh, that was the show where the bloke got stabbed, right? This is 15 years later. A guy who has been doing all kinds of drugs, all kinds of drinking for like 40, 50 years, whatever, right? And how can you explain that? It's crazy, right? It's like superhuman. And I was like, I almost didn't even remember that had happened. It was like a weird, surreal thing. Like, I'm like, yeah, that was the show where the guy got stabbed. And I'm like amazed. I'm knocked on my ass. And then, you know what he said? He goes, we were louder tonight, though. That was it.
Motorhead rocks. I hope everybody here knows about Bang-A-Song Studios. Okay. And if you don't know about Bang-A-Song, please head behind CVS and walk in the door there and go up and see Tony Goddess. Not only an incredible musician, but an incredible he's got an incredible recording studio. My son has recorded there and his friends, and please take a look. Tony Goddess, come on up.
Thanks for that nice introduction, Maureen. You know, when she first asked me to do this, I said, oh, well, this will be easy. I'll just read from the book. And so some backstory. In the winter of 1992, I formed a band called Papa's Fritas, and we were pretty lucky and got to spend the next 8 years making records and touring the U.S. and Western Europe and Japan. And a guy I grew up with in Delaware did a couple of those U.S. tours with us and wrote a thinly veiled account of it. It's called You Think You Hear. His name's Matt O'Keefe, and I'm sure you can get it for 99 cents on Amazon. And if we come off good, it's just a thinly veiled account. And if we come off bad, it's totally fiction. But then I thought that's kind of cheap to just read someone else's story, and I realized I have some stories, and I figured I could tie it all into, I could all tell stories about my time in Memphis. So the first time I played in Memphis, it was Papa's Fritas, and it was the spring of 1994. I was not yet 21 years old, and we didn't have cell phones or the internet, so we pulled up to a giant cement building that was painted entirely black with a plywood stage that was painted black. And there was the bartender, owner, and 5 customers. There was a young couple in their third wheel. And there was Alex Chilton's bass player. And there was a really drunk dude. And the owner said, well, you guys got to play music till 1:30, so why don't you go on at midnight? And I think it was around 6 p.m. at the time. So I tried to engage Alex as bass player, and he wanted nothing to do with this little 20-year-old kid who was a fanboy. And so the owner said, well, why don't we watch some videos of bands that have played here before? And he said, I got one of G.G. Allen, who played here. I don't know if any of you guys know G.G. Allen. He's actually from New England. And we said, sure, what's G.G. Allen all about? And if you don't know, it's basically about the stuff that you find in the deepest, darkest reaches of the internet. And this video, he happened to give himself an enema on stage with the microphone. So needless to say, when we played, I did not let my lips anywhere near that microphone. I did sing into it, but I didn't get very close. And so, you know, I should have realized that the owner of the club was kind of a scumbag, because we finished playing, and Alex's bass player left, but the young couple and their friend had stuck around, and the one really drunk guy stuck around, and he said, let me help you carry out your equipment. And he started helping us carrying out our equipment. And he also started bringing out the microphones and mic stands and things from the venue. So the owner came out and punched him in the face and knocked him unconscious. And we said, wow, we got to get out of here. We're little kids in this big, scary rock and roll town. So I think we were playing in St. Louis the next night. I don't know whether you drove straight up there. That was also our first time playing off the coast, I think we had been in New Orleans the night before. Anyway, that was our first time in Memphis, and I should have known, because the second time was uneventful. We played a place called Barristers. The first place was the Antenna, and we doubled our audience. I think we had 10 people there, but nothing really happened. The third time, we hadn't played Memphis yet. We'd played in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we had a great time playing in Little Rock, and it was hopping, and there was tons of kids, and we really were feeling it. We said, we got plenty of energy. Let's drive up to Memphis and spend the night with our buddy from New Orleans who'd actually moved there by that point. And so we were blocks from his house, and we said, let's stop and get some bananas and some ice cream or whatever we need for breakfast tomorrow. We pulled into a southern chain called Piggly Wiggly. I don't know if any of you know the Piggly Wiggly. And I guess I was just feeling like a cocky rock kid. I was 21 by that point. And I took a lollipop off the shelf and ate it while we were grocery shopping. And we finished, and I had stuck the stick in my back pocket, and we paid for our groceries. And I came out. We finished paying. We're walking out. And the manager came over and said, what happened to that lollipop that you're eating? I said, oh, my gosh, I forgot to pay for it. How much was it, 25 cents? And he said, officer, come over here. I need you to arrest this man for shoplifting. And the officer said, really? You're going to make me arrest him for shoplifting? He said, it's the principal. He said, at 25 cents, it's the principal. I want you to take him downtown. So the officer did. I don't think he cuffed me, but he put me in the back of his car, and he told me, I'm a musician, too. I play drums in a Christian metal band. We sound like Metallica. I said, well, that's cool. You really going to take me to jail? And he said, I work for the people. I have to do this. So it was a Friday night. No, it was a Saturday night because we were planning on going to see Al Green. I don't know if you know this, but Al Green has a church in Memphis, and we were going to go see him on Sunday morning. So I was shattered that we might miss that. So Saturday night in the drunk tank in Memphis, and you're in there, and it was my first time in jail. I don't know if any of you have spent the night in jail before, but the drunk tank is just kind of a holding cell where everyone who's gotten arrested that night gets put, and there's guys with blood all over themselves and broken noses from fights and car accidents. And there's also people that have been there many times, and they're just sleeping. They've taken their shoes off, and are using their shoes as their pillow. So I'm just like, I am not going to sit down on this floor. And I did after about 3 or 4 hours. And I said, I'm not going to lie down and put my head on this floor. But I took off my shoes and put my head on the floor. And so eventually, I don't think I had a watch. I certainly didn't have a cell phone. I don't know how long it was, but they catalog your possessions. And I think they basically issued us, scrubs, for lack of a better word. And they put us in this, we all got divided up into these little smaller holding cells. I'd say it was about 12 people per holding cell because they were just these thin little triangles with a plank on either side and a commode at the very end. And one of the dudes I was with must have spent many time in jail because he was feeling very comfortable taking a crap in front of the 12 other dudes sitting in there. So from there, I think they did actually put us into, I should have said defecate, sorry. They put us into the cells very briefly, and then I remember they took us to the showers. And we're all in there naked, waiting in line to take showers, and some dudes are smoking a joint. And I just couldn't, I didn't want to think about how that joint had gotten in there. Maybe they'd stuck it in the armpit or the hair, but needless to say, unlike myself at the time, I said no thank you. And yeah. I took a shower in the Memphis jail, and then the next morning we were brought in front of the judge, and the judge said, son, I think you have paid enough for your crime. And I called, on tour back then, you were always looking for payphones, and I found a payphone and tried to call my bandmates, and I could not get in touch. I just remember walking. I think the jail was kind of out in the suburbs. It wasn't like downtown Memphis. Just walking around trying to find them. They eventually found me, and we did play that night. Maybe we doubled our audience again and played to 20 people. Needless to say, that was the last time we played Memphis. We played Nashville many times, and I don't know, New Orleans, St. Louis, but we never played Memphis again. But I did go back there with my wife a few years later. Our buddy Matt was still living there, and we did get to go see Al Green at his church, and it was profound. It wasn't enough to convert me to Jesus, but it was certainly enough to make me feel that humanity is all I need. And, I'd love to go back in Memphis again, and I just will be a little more careful next time. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tony. We're running a little over, so I'll ask our next storytellers to please be under the five or under, if you could. And I also wanted to say that tonight is a fundraiser for the Gloucester Writers Center. If you could please make a donation, there's a basket at the back. And what we were asking for is maybe $5 donations. So thank you so much if you can make that. Our next storyteller is Linda Robinson. She runs a really wonderful program at the Writers Center called the 10-Minute Play. I really encourage you to either take her class or head over to the Rocky Neck Cultural Center where they're usually read, and you can find out more about that on the Gloucester Writers Center Blast. Please come up, Linda Robinson.
Hi. Rock and roll has been such a significant part of my life that I actually now have 2 hearing aids, and I still can't hear. But most of the men that I was involved with through my life, starting with my first boyfriend when I was 12, 2 of my 3 brothers, my ex-husband, were all rock musicians. But the man I'm here to talk about tonight is my father, because my dad was rock and roll. He was. I learned at an early age when Elvis was on the Ed Sullivan Show. And you know, all across America, people were waiting with anticipation, and they thought maybe he was like a pretty talented Western country singer, maybe, you know. And then Elvis came out, you know, and everything changed. Everything changed. And all over America, you know, families were hiding, putting, you know, their hands over their kids' eyes and turning off the TVs. In my living room, my father leaped out of his chair, screaming, "That guy is spectacular! He's gonna be famous!" You know, and all of America and my mom thought that he had lost his mind. Then the Beatles came on to Ed Sullivan. Same thing, identical thing. My dad went completely insane, leaped out of his chair, saying, "These guys are spectacular! They're gonna change everything! They're gonna change the world!" Change the world. Now it was getting even more significant. And, you know, once again, you know, America and my mother thought that my dad was losing his mind. Fast forward a couple of years, and the Beatles are now the Beatles. And they are coming to Boston for a concert. They're coming to the racetrack, to Suffolk Downs. And my dad finds this out. He's like the first person in the line. And he gets 3 tickets for him and my 2 younger brothers. And this is like one of the biggest events in my family, that my dad got tickets to the Beatles concert, and, you know, and my 2 younger brothers went. So they go to the concert, and there's some kind of incident going on at one of the gates. And they're not letting in a bunch of kids with tickets, ticket holders. So it turns out that these kids had bought tickets, but they were fake tickets. You know, somebody had printed up tickets and sold them to them. So they had paid for these tickets. So my dad, this mild-mannered man, completely took over. And he started yelling at the guards at the gate. "These kids have tickets. They're going to see the Beatles. Come on, these kids are going to see the Beatles." And they were like a little army, you know. And they went through the gates, and they went to the other side, and they all get in. Nobody stopped them, and all the kids were like all around my dad. You know, he was their hero. He was like the Pied Piper, bringing these kids in. So fast forward a little bit. 2 of my brothers now are drummers. Big surprise, right? My brother David and my brother Paul. And the rehearsals were all going on in my parents' basement, of course. And my dad loved it. He would stand at the top of the stairs and listen to the music. And when they were done rehearsing, he would go downstairs and he would say, "Oh, that was great. But that 4th song that you did, oh, that was the one." So they start playing. They're starting to get gigs, you know, little gigs, high schools and churches and things. And they need to transport all their equipment. So now the family station wagon is the thing that takes all of everybody to their gig. And it's a big station wagon. It's one of those ones with the fake wood paneling on the side. So my brother David says to my dad, "Dad, I got some ideas for the car. You know, I just want to make some alterations to the car." And my dad goes, "Oh yeah, sure, Dave." So David completely covers all of the wood paneling on our family station wagon with pink and silver paisley contact paper. And blue around the edges. Well, my father loved that car. He drove that car everywhere. He drove that car to work. And he worked on a military base. I mean, he drove that car to the supermarket. He would be driving on the road, and cars would go by, and young people would yell out the window. They'd see the car, and then they'd see my dad, and they'd look at me, and they'd go, "Rock and roll!" And my dad would go, "Rock and roll!" It was absolutely crazy. If you turned the car on when my dad had been driving, he just turned the ignition, you would be blasted out of the front seat with this loud rock and roll. Anyway, fast forward, the Modern Lovers, my brother's band starting to get a little more famous, my brother David. Now we're going to venues. So we stopped from the high schools and now we're going to venues. Now we're going to clubs. So now my parents are going to the Rat. They're at the Rat. They're known at the Rat. Oh, hi, Mr. Robinson. Great to see you. There's even a picture of my mom on one of the websites that's about the early history of rock and roll in Boston. And it's my mom with 2 Rat girls. And it's titled, Mrs. Robinson and Some Friends at the Rat. At the Rat. So now David gets his next band, and it's the Cars. Now the venues they're getting better. First record release party at the Park Plaza. My dad's beside himself with excitement. A young woman comes to talk to him at his table to interview him, and he doesn't know, that he's being interviewed. So she says, "How do you feel about your son?" And he says, "Oh, it's great. I love my son's music, but my favorite music, I like hard rock. I like Judas Priest." Anyway, we finally end up at the Boston Garden, and Nick Lowe is the opening act. And my dad is so excited now, he has lost his voice. He's kind of trying to whisper. And he stands on the stage, and he watches everything. And so when it was over, he said to my brother, Dave, thousands of people lit their cigarette lighters. It was fabulous. Anyway, the thing ends, and we can't find him. We can't find my father anywhere at the Boston Garden. So check all the bathrooms and everything. My brother David goes to Nick Lowe's dressing room, and there's my father in the dressing room, sitting in a circle with Nick Lowe and the band, drinking beers, and they've been in there for hours. And Nick turned around and said, "Oh, Dave, we love your dad. Your dad's great. Oh, we love your dad." And for years after, when my brother met Nick, Nick would ask after my father. But my dad, he was this normal-looking, mild-mannered father who was rock and roll.
Thank you, Linda. Straight from one of the most influential bands of the early 80s and continues to be, I think, Gang of Four, Hugo Burnham, come up and tell your story.
Hello. See, normally I'm back here where nobody can see me. And whenever there's a photographer taking pictures, the fucking guitar player or the singer always gets in front of the drummer, so nobody can see the drummer. Yes, Hawkwind. First time I did drugs was at a Hawkwind concert. Anyway, I want to talk about opportunities. What an opportunity, said my equally unemployed, recently graduated roommate as we read it wasn't a text, it was a telegram back then, from this new hot band called the Buzzcocks, punk rock band called the Buzzcocks, who wanted us, who wanted us to come on their first big UK tour with them. And what an opportunity. So we took it, got us to London for the first time, and we killed it. It was fantastic. What an opportunity. My mother said, as we were being chased by every major record company in England wanting to sign us to a record deal, "But where are you going to make any money? Where are you going to bring the money home?" said my mum. "Oh, Mum, it's a record deal." We signed to EMI Records, just like the Beatles. They killed it. "What an opportunity," my dad said, as we were heading off to America in June 1979 on our first ever tour and visit here. He said, "Why are you taking your brother? He's got a real job." And he said, "Well, okay, here's $100. That's to be spent on Disneyland, not to be spent on drugs." We didn't go to Disneyland. But anyway, moving forward, looking back over our very sort of fractured career, our singer said, "We never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity." This was in 2005 when we were all in a room together for the first time since 1981, and we were discussing an opportunity to go back on the road together. We were just all turning 50. It was insane. And it was a bit awkward at first, for the first few minutes, but then the disappointment and disgust we'd had with each other for years faded away, and it looked like we could do it. We could make use of this opportunity, and we took it. And I sort of looked around the room, and it was only then I realized we could really do it, because I saw we all still had our hair. And that's very important in rock and roll. So we did it, and we toured England and all over Europe again, and came here and toured all over the States and South America and Japan, and it was good. We killed it. It was great. But there are actually many more missed opportunities. Bad decisions, self-absorbed, stupid decisions, arrogant, ignorant decisions we made. Well, not me. I was outvoted. I was just outvoted. But my missed opportunities were mainly about people. And the first really important one was in Los Angeles in the 90s, having dinner at some very unimportant sort of restaurant. And I was looking over my wife's shoulder, and unlike most people who go out to dinner in LA, I wasn't looking to see who came in the door, to see if they were famous or worth schmoozing with. You know, I was actually looking for the bathroom. And then it's like, oh God, 2 tables away, it's Ringo Starr. And then I saw the bathroom sign in the other direction. So I got up from the table and I went towards the bathroom because I thought, no, I can't. I've got to be cool. He doesn't really be bothered by another English drummer living in LA. Another English drummer who was signed to EMI Records. Another English drummer who took that picture leaning over the stairs, looking up, like they had on their album covers. Another English drummer who recorded at Abbey Road in that huge big studio. Another English drummer who did that photo session at the crosswalk in front of Abbey Road. And we made our bass player take his shoes off as well. But I didn't. I couldn't. I had to be cool. I was an idiot. The second one, it was in LA again, and I was in Van Nuys over in the valley doing my record company guy thing at a studio there. And, boring, dull Van Nuys. Not down in Hollywood at one of the really cool studios like Ocean Way or the Capitol Tower and thing, where all the real big stars go. Now I'm up in dreary old Van Nuys. And I went out to get something from my car, and I was parked next to this dreary old Volvo. And I'm moving across, and the guy gets out the Volvo, and it's John Fogerty. From Creedence Clearwater Revival. I mean, I can't tell you, I spent more time in the shed at the bottom of our yard trying to play to those songs than the Beatles songs. The first band I ever saw live was Creedence Clearwater Revival in 1971 with my dad. And the second band I ever saw live was Creedence Clearwater Revival. A year later, on my own. I was right down the front, and I got a drumstick thrown at me, and so anyway, I went up and I introduced myself, said who I was, and shook his hand vigorously and told him how much he meant to me, and he gave me a big hug, and it was fantastic. Well, no, he didn't actually, and I didn't either, because I don't know, I've got to be cool, I've got to be cool. So I just sort of, shut my car door, and I did that sort of English thing, right? And I went back into the studio, kicking myself. Because I had to be cool. I was an idiot. And there were more. The autobiography I never sent to the music biz mogul who signed us to Warner Brothers in the States. The guy who invented the term rhythm and blues. The guy who was a founder of Atlantic Records. The guy who made Aretha Franklin famous. And his son said, yeah, send in the book. He said great things about you in it. You'll sign it. And I didn't, because I'm an idiot. And then just 4 weeks ago, I should have called my old boss at Island Records. He lived down in Rhode Island, and I'd been talking to his daughter. He'd been sick for quite a while, and he wasn't well. And she said, oh, he'd love to hear from you. And I was just like hesitating. I didn't know what to say because sickness scares me. And I thought, well, he's going into hospital. I'll call him on Monday when he comes out of hospital. He didn't come out of hospital. So I'm a fucking idiot. And I didn't get to say to Lou that I loved him. So I'm a tool. Missed opportunity. But anyway, back to 2005. We took that opportunity. Not just for the money, which was nice, but not enough. Not just for the fun, which was enormous when we were on stage together. Not just for the great press and the adulation, which was nice but fleeting. But for me, it was about two people. My wife, who had sort of been a little bit too young to see us the first time around, and my daughter, who was 5. But they came. The best part was they came, they saw, and they smiled, and they loved it. The sellout show in London. Well, I mean, it was a bit, it hurt this time around. And, the old days of gallons of vodka and bags of white unmentionable powder sort of replaced by fine French white wine and ibuprofen. Back in the days, just before we went on stage, the tour was like, everyone had a bump, and this time we went, did everyone pee? so anyway, the sellout show in London, we're standing there, it's towards the end of the tour, and the crowd's going mad, and Tessie, my little girl, breaks away from the wings and rushes over to me and jumps up into my arms, and the crowd just went fucking apeshit at that. It was like, what a moment. And then at the end of the first American tour, we're playing at the Fillmore in San Francisco, the Fillmore West. I mean, and it's just like, it's great, and I'm playing away, and I'm sorry I'm going long, but tough, I'm punk rock, all right? And I'm playing away. And I look up to the balcony up here, and there's this little face waving and smiling. Oh, it's just, this is it. This is rock and roll, and I'm playing away. And I look up again 1 minute later for a bit more of that, and she's fast asleep on her mother's shoulder. Cooler than anyone else there, really, which put me in my place. So anyway, when you get opportunities, take them. Don't be cool. Don't be an idiot. Thank you very much.
Great advice from a master. I think the first time I ran into this next storyteller, he was spinning at WMWM, Salem State Radio. And he taught me everything I know about rock and roll. My wonderful friend, my rock and roll companion. I love you, Chris, so much. He's done so much for Boston radio. And please welcome Chris Kennedy.
Thank you, Maureen. Seriously, you're going to have me follow Hugo? Really?
I'm sorry.
Thanks. How do you follow that? Well, actually, I can, because my story is about meeting your heroes. It is about having the listening to music as a kid and listening to it through and through, and getting an opportunity to actually meet one of your heroes. And the hero that I'm talking about is actually Joe Strummer from The Clash. So the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones back in the late '90s were getting a star put out on the on Newbury Street, right next to what it used to be Tower Records, and Joe Strummer was there to present them with this. And so later on that night, they had a record release party, and I happened to pop by the record release party towards the end of it. And I walk over and I see a friend in the corner, so I walk over to talk to her, and she's talking with Joe Strummer. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really cool. So Joe and I get introduced. We talk about my radio show. We talk about the radio show that he's just getting started doing, which turned out to be London Calling, and which if you haven't listened to, download them because they're fantastic. Really great music on them. So we meet, we talk. I have my picture taken with him. I think, oh, that's pretty cool. You know, that's it. I just met, hero Joe Strummer. And I thought the night was over, but it really wasn't. I was working the overnight shift at the time. I left, some friends of mine and I left the bar. We were going to go to someplace else to hang out because I was already out and I didn't really want to go home and then have to go to work. So we popped into Charlie's Tap, which is over by the which is part of the Green Street Grill. And I walk in and there's Joe and his wife standing in front of this jukebox. And so he sees me and he says, "Hey, Chris." I'm doing a terrible Joe Strummer impersonation, but he's got that gravelly voice and he's like, "Chris, Mr. DJ man, help me play DJ." And I'm thinking, really? I'm going to play DJ for Joe Strummer? Like, okay, this is pretty cool. He's like, "My wife just pumped $1 million into this thing," and so we just started punching in song after song after song, and I'm punching in like Cannonball Adderley and Etta James, and he's punching in Nina Simone. He is in love with Nina Simone. He just can't get enough of the Nina Simone stuff. So we're having a great time. Everything's going great. The only problem is the volume of the jukebox just isn't quite loud enough. And so Joe turns to me and says, "Help me move this thing." And I said, "Move what thing?" And he says, "The jukebox." And I'm thinking, you're asking the guy who weighs 110 pounds to help you move a jukebox? You got the wrong guy. So he grabs a hold of one corner, I grab a hold of the other corner, and I'm convinced we're going to get tossed out of here. And I'm thinking, getting tossed out of a bar with Joe Strummer, you got some pretty good punk rock credibility going on there. It's not so bad. So we managed to pull this thing and get it to move just enough so he can stick his head down in the back, and he pulls a pad of paper and pen out of his pocket, and he starts writing down some numbers. And I don't know what he's doing, but, he's Joe Strummer, so you could just go with it. So he pops his head back out, and he asks if anybody has a mobile phone. Now, this is in the late 90s, so not everybody had mobile phones yet. The technology did exist, but we didn't have them. So what he was really trying to do is call up the jukebox company to find out if there was a way that he could turn up the jukebox to his liking. So, needless to say, no one had a cell phone, so that wasn't really an option. So he left to go to another bar, and then at the other bar, I had to work, so I was trying to behave, and Joe wasn't really having any of that, and he was just like, "Chris, you're not keeping up with us. You're holding everybody back. You gotta keep drinking." And I said, "Joe, I gotta go to work, man. I can't do this." And he says, "No, you gotta keep up with us." And I said, "Joe, I gotta go to work in a few hours. Like, I can't, no, there's no way I can do this." And so he eventually starts harassing me more and says, "Your boss just called, and he doesn't have the heart to tell you, but you've been fired. I'm the one who's telling you. Get drinking." So, needless to say, it was an incredible night. And so my story is, go meet your heroes, because you can have an incredible evening if you do.
Chris Kennedy. You couldn't turn the radio on without hearing this person in the morning. And I would say one of the most influential alternative rock DJs in the country. He was a formative part of my rock and roll world, my alternative rock world. And he played some of the most important music in my life. And I'm very pleased to have Morning Guy Tai from WFNX here to share with us a story. Thank you, Tai.
I've never done this kind of thing before. So be careful, because I'm about to drop a whole bunch of names. Be careful, you have to pick them up. So, mid-1970s, I can't drive yet, but I can ride a bike. So I ride my little bike down to Carvel Ice Cream for my job. And I call up the local DJ at WLIR on Long Island, like T-Max actually out there. And I go, hey, you know what you ought to play? You ought to play blah, 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 blah. And he's like, how do you know about these bands? And I said, because I know everything about music. It's the only thing that I care about is music. And this guy's like, I'm the guy working here, and you're asking me a million questions. You know all these bands. How the frig old are you? I'm like, I am 16. I said, if you come into my ice cream store, I'll give you a free cone, because you're my favorite disc jockey. Well, this little leprechaun walks in, about the size of Chris Kennedy. His name is Dennis McNamara. And he goes, I'm here to collect that free cone, dude. And I'm like, hey, you don't look like a star, or you're pretty ordinary. Radio must be pretty accessible. He goes, you ought to come down to the studio, hang out with us. I'm like, yeah, I'm 16, stupid. He goes, bring some ice cream, because I guess people in radio had the munchies in the 70s. Just a guess. So I bring down a couple of bags of flying sausages by Carvel. I made Cookie Puss. I made Fudgy the Whale. I made all those things. Brought down the flying sausages. I was the most popular guy in town. All of a sudden, I was Tom Carvel. They're like, you ought to come here more often. So I'm now hanging around the radio station a couple of days a week. Everybody likes me. So back to the opportunity game and all that, right? Dennis is like, hey, he calls the store. He goes, hey, what are you doing tonight? It's a year later or so. I said, I got to work. He says, well, we're going to see Led Zeppelin. So if you want to go to the Garden to see Zeppelin, be ready at about 6 o'clock. I'll come pick you up. I got to work an ice cream job. I can't go see a concert. A little while later, it's like, hey, the Rolling Stones are doing a secret show in Manhattan. You want to go? I got to do my hair. I don't know if I'm going to make that show. So I did that too. I did those opportunities, Hugo, didn't I? So this is my little cheat sheet. So Dennis gets out of the rock and roll game a few years later, and I start a 30-year career in music radio. It was nice. WFNX. I became a talk show host on WRKO. I worked at WZLX. So the moral of that part of the story is, you know what? Take a young person under your wing, teach him or her the ropes, believe in the spirit of rock and roll, and sometimes it takes its way to the next place. So just a couple of little name drop things at the end here. So Dennis gets out of rock and roll, and he's working for a record company. Years later, I got a family. I live up in Danvers, Mass. I got a driveway and a basketball hoop in it, and I'm pretty suburban, man. He goes, hey, there's this ABBA show that I'm working on. You really want to come and see this? And I go, no, I don't. He said, it's brand new. I'm telling you, this show is going to knock you out. And I go, it's not. I'm not the dancing queen. Only 17. But I bring the family to see Mamma Mia, and by the end of the show, there I am, like everyone else. And Mamma Mia becomes the biggest show in the world. A couple of years later, he goes, hey, dude, come down to New York and see this show. It's based on The Wizard of Oz. I go, I don't care about The Wizard of Oz. It was a great movie, but I don't want to see some Broadway show where they're all going, ah. A couple of weeks later, I'm sitting in the 10th row for Wicked. It's brand new, and the whole world explodes, and now it's the biggest show in the world. So it looks like Dennis is onto some good things here. Calls me up a couple of years later, and he goes, let's go see Dylan at the Garden. I've seen Dylan 100 times. How many times? I've seen him. I know what he does. I don't want to go to see Dylan. He goes, yeah, the only other thing is we don't have tickets, really. All I can get you is an all-access pass. So I said, what does that mean? He goes, you can't sit anywhere. You got to keep moving. All night I have to just keep moving? He says, yeah, but it's Dylan. Come on. So we go, and then at one point I'm walking, because that's what you have to do. And I'm backstage, and I'm standing there like this, and then at arm's length, a door opens, and Peter Wolf walks out. Jay Giles Band, the ultimate Boston rock star. And he's standing like this, and I look over and I go, because that's what you do, right? You go, that's what you do. And the nerve is Chris Kennedy. I didn't spend the night with him. But then it gets better. So over here, another door, like a mystery door, right? This one opens, and out walks Van Morrison. And now I'm like, act cool, act cool, act cool. Been in radio for years, you've seen this stuff, you met these people, it's no big thing. Then out of this door walks Zimmy, Bob Dylan. He walks out. Now these people are all, I told you, at arm's length, and I'm sitting here like this. Some guy. I don't know why I'm here. I have no right to be here. I'm just here. But it gets better. Because out of this door, door number 3, out of this door steps George Harrison.
A few years ago, I went to Dave Sagg's Thursday night gig, and I used to play guitar with Dave in Ira Levine's basement when Ira lived near the bowling alley here in town with John Kagan and Hank Turgeon and Will Hunt. And anyway, that night, John Kagan was there, and he sang a couple songs with Dave Sagg's band. I think he sang Higher and Higher, you know, that Jackie Wilson song. So Kagan was done, and I said to Sag, can I sing one? I didn't have my guitar. I didn't play guitar at that time. But I said, so Sag says, sure. What do you want to sing there, Sarky? And my answer is always the same. Route 66. Yeah. That's my song. That's like the only song I can sing. Well, not the only song I can sing, but it's my song. So the band starts, and as you know, it starts in that A chord, you know, do 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 do. So I figure let the band play for a while, because I know I've been to enough rock shows to know that if a band starts in one chord, they hang out on one chord, the tension builds because people are waiting for the song to start. So I'm into it. I close my eyes. I'm really into it. The band is just chugging along like a locomotive. It's like, and it's the tension, the rock and roll energy is building and building and building. You know, do 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 do. I open my eyes. My wife is standing right in front of me. She had gone out to dinner with a friend of hers in Gloucester and dropped by the rum line on a whim just to see what was happening. And I look at her, she looks at me, and I'm like, okay, time to deliver. It's like a cold night. It's like February. The hometown crowd, the Gloucester hometown crowd is there. They see what's going on. They go crazy. I mean, they're like everybody. It's like Gloucester, you know. It's like serious. This is a serious rock and roll moment. This is like intense. So I'm thinking it's almost like you're up. It's almost like you're up. It's the bottom of the ninth inning. The bases are loaded. The score's tied. You got to deliver here, you know. So I deliver, and it's just like there's nothing like. First of all, you're only singing one song. It's like a 100-yard dash. It's not like a marathon. It was intense. I mean, it was like that energy after you do a really good rock and roll performance, that energy, that gloating, intense energy, there's nothing like it. So my wife is at a table with a friend. I'm going to go over and sit down and say hi. Not say hi, but sit down and just hang with her and like relive the whole thing. So as I'm walking by, Kagan is sitting at a table with some friends. So I drop by, I say, hey, how you doing? So among my rock and roll friends, proper etiquette predicates that we give each other shit at all times. That's very, very important, because without that, I don't think I have any good stories. So Keegan looks at me and he says, so I see you're still singing that one note, Sarkin. implying, obviously, that my singing is lame. To me, it's like we're playing volleyball, and he's setting me up for the spank. I can't just leave that alone. So I look at him, and I say, yeah, John, but I got that one note down.